transpired, if any area in the world was made for skiing, it had to be Crested Butte. 9,000 to 11,000 plus feet in elevation, heavy snow, although not this year, cold weather, great terrain, and a great tradition that went all the way back to 1880 in the mining camps. Placer miners came in here in the 1860s, and one of them was a guy named John Franklin Dyer, who wrote about this in a book called The Snowshoe Itinerant. And he skied in 1861 into Taylor Park and went 7 miles up Washington Gulch to a placer mining camp of 250 people called Minersville. And he preached the Bible, 1861. Jim Brennan, 1872, Lake Irwin, another placer miner. The name of that lake for a long time was Lake Brennan, until it was renamed after Dick Irwin, who came in with the Irwin mining boom. When the skiers came in, they came in early and they started 5 great silver camps. Gothic, 8 miles north of Crested Butte, Irwin, 10 miles west of Crested Butte, Tin Cup on the edge of Taylor Park, Pitchin, up the Quartz Creek Valley, and White Pine at the base of Monarch Pass. 25 to 40,000 people came into the Gunnison Country from 1880 to 1882 in the spring, summer, and fall. Not very many of them stayed in the winter. By today's standards, we have about 17,000 people that live in the Gunnison County today. So you just imagine that we had a time and a half or 2 times that many back in 1880, 81, and 82. The only way to get around in the wintertime was on skis. And not very many of the miners knew how to ski. But some of them had come from the San Laurentian Mountains in French Quebec, Canada, and had competed in carnivals, ski carnivals. They know how to ski. And others were from Sweden and Norway. And they showed the miners how to ski. And they cut down their own skis, fire-killed spruce, boiled the tips in camp kettles. The skis were 9 to 14 feet long. You'll see some of them. You had a 7-foot long guide pole for balance. You had a leather toe piece where you could put your mining boot in. You had a 4-inch heel block where your heel could go up but not back. And very few people turned. Those who did had mastered the telemark turn. And that's how it was done in the early days of the mining camps. And then, with all these mining camps existing, tour races began to be held on weekends in all the various mining camps. One weekend it was in Crested Butte, then it was in Crystal and Marble and Gunnison and Irwin and Gothic. With $25 first prize, $10 second prize, $5 third prize. And one of the legendary races of them all, it's in the Colorado Ski Hall of Fame in Vail, came on Washington's birthday, February 22nd, 1886, on the side of Gibson Ridge, right above the bench. Now I asked Josiah, my good friend, how they could have done that with all the trees there. And Joe said there weren't any trees. They cut them down for mine props, they cut them down for railroad ties, and they cut them down for cabins. And there on that day, they ran a special Denver and Rio Grande train in from Gunnison, and 1,000 people awaited at the bottom of the run, drinking, betting on their favorites, and up on top they had heats. And finally they got down to the last heat. The winner of the heats went into the finals. And the 4 men in the finals were Harry Cornwall, mining engineer from Irwin, who left us with a 100-page memoir of those days in Irwin 140 years ago. And Albert Fish, another mining engineer from Irwin. And then there was Al Johnson, the legendary snowshoe carrier from Crystal to Crested Butte. Hardly ever beaten. And then the fourth guy was a 16-year-old boy from Crested Butte. Nobody knew too much about him. His name was Charlie Bainey, who the newspaper said had been fairly raised on shoes. Snowshoes at that time, what we call skis today. And there they were on top of Gibson Ridge, 525-yard course. No preparation, no gauge, first guy down to the bottom wins. A rifle shot started them off on the race. Cornwall was out early, Fish was out early, and then, said the newspaper, Charlie Bainey, the light, nimble little fellow, doubled himself up on his shoes and he shot down the mountain like a speeding bullet. You know how to write in those days. Charlie Bainey went into a racing tuck, and Al Johnson followed him, and he went into a racing tuck and temporarily passed Bainey. But as they went through the finish line in front of the railroad tracks, at a speed estimated at 60 miles an hour, Charlie Bainey had beaten Al Johnson by 18 inches and went into the history books. Al Johnson died very young at the age of 42 of tuberculosis in Phoenix, Arizona. Charlie Bainey went on to become an engineer for the Rock Island Line and came back to Crested Butte in 1928, 42 years after the great race. And he said that he had many great memories working on the railroad, but he never could recapture that day on a clear blue sky at Crested Butte on Gibson Ridge 42 years earlier, when he had beaten the best of them all, Al Johnson, in that great race. Al Johnson, of course, the great snowshoe carrier. We had another one that not too many people know about that may have been better, Alex Parent, who competed against Al Johnson in Montreal in the snow carnivals. He carried the mail from St. Elmo on the east side of the Continental Divide. Over 12,154 foot high Tin Cup Pass. Past Mirror Lake into Tin Cup. 25 miles through Taylor Park. Over Taylor Pass at 11,800 feet. Down Express Creek into Ashcroft and 11 more miles into Aspen. Once every month he did it. Took a 3-day trip to do it. He did it for 38 years, from 1880 to 1918. And then there was Louis Barthel, who carried the mail from Crested Butte along the East River, not the route we take today, into Gothic. All these guys were legends. And then, in 1893, the silver panic hit, and the price of silver plummeted to 58 cents an ounce. And all of the silver camps became ghost towns. Yeah, great song, the good times are all gone, and we're bound for moving on. But the locals in Crested Butte did not stop skiing. Crested Butte still was booming with coal, with 8 coal mines, including the Big Mine, which opened up. And as a result, they skied on Chocolate Peak on the west end of Elk Avenue, 1 mile up the Slate River at Chicken Ranch, on the side of Gibson Ridge, at Quicks Hill across from Cement Creek, and at Monarch and Marshall Passes. And they kept the skiing tradition alive. In the early 1930s, a man named Billy Fisk and a guy named Andre Roach, for whom the Roach Run is named in Aspen, left the town of Ashcroft and hiked up to Mount Hayden, way above Ashcroft. And Andre Roach said this was one of the top 3 ski areas in the world if you could open it up. Down below, Stuart Mace was running sled dogs. From 1940 to about 1980, appeared in television on Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. Some of you remember that radio program. Unfortunately, Billy Fisk was the first American killed in World War II flying for the RAF, and the dream died. but the dream still stayed alive. And then, on February the 13th, 1938, 420 people from the Salida Ski Club, 120 from the Gunnison Ski Club, took the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad and came up to the top of Marshall Pass, which is a parallel pass to Monarch. And they skied and tobogganed from the top down to the Chavano Switch, where the railroad train would pick you up and bring you back up for 10 cents. Willie the porter played the accordion and they danced the polka on the walls. People drank a lot of beer and they ate and they dreamed of the day when you might have a lift and you wouldn't have to walk up to ski down. And then during the winter of 1939 and 1940, locals from Gunnison got together, went to the top of Cumberland Pass, not far from Taylor Park, got towers, cables, and ore buckets from the Blistered Horn Mine. And they brought them to Cement Creek on the side of Cement Mountain. And they opened up the first chairlift in Colorado called Pioneer, which opened up during the winter of 1939 and 40. The lift was called the Comet. You're going to see the lift. It was pretty primitive. The runs were called the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, and the Milky Way. Everything was a fall-away turn, and it's pretty steep. But Pioneer lasted from 1939 and 40, closed during the war, reopened in 46, 47, and lasted until 1951. Locals skied there, and Western State College held intercollegiate races there. From there, after Pioneer closed up because of safety regulations, Western State is looking for a new ski area. And as they drove by the Rosman Ranch in 1950, Adolf Koos, one of the skiers, said, "There it is." And Sven Wick, our coach, and the team walked over, talked to John Rosman. Rosman said, "No problem." And on the flank of Whetstone Mountain, the Rosman Hills ski area started in 1951. 3 rope toes, a jump, a downhill, a jumping tower, and slalom gates. And one great intercollegiate race after another was held at Rosman Hill. Then came World War II, and everything closed up, except in 1942, the Army and the United States decided they needed mountain troops because a lot of you folks got real young then, but it was in doubt as to who was going to win that war. And we needed those mountain troops to fight in the Sierras of the Rockies if the war came here. If we were lucky, they would fight in the Apennines and the Alps and the Pyrenees. And at an old mining camp not far from Tennessee Pass called Pando, they opened up Camp Hale. And the 10th Mountain Division trained there at Camp Hale. It was said that the United States up to that time could fight in Florida in the winter and Maine in the summer, but not in both. 14,300 men trained at Camp Hale. $128 million went in to over 600 barracks. 7 miles to the south and 2,000 feet higher, they built 2 6,000-foot-long rope tows at a place that we now call Cooper Hill. 7 miles an hour and 1 mile, up to 11,000 feet. And that's where they learned how to ski. Some of the 10th Mountain Ski Division men were legendary already. Paul Petzold from the Grand Tetons had gotten to 26,200 feet at K2. One of the others was a man by the name of Tony Mott, one of the great downhill skiers from Austria. Another one was a man by the name of Friedel Pfeiffer. Later on went over to Aspen, another tremendous skier. Torger Tokel, one of the great ski jumpers in the world from Norway. Bill Bowerman, who started Nike. Norman Mailer, the author. Bob Parker and Pete Seibert, who started Vail. Alf Engen started Alta. All of these guys were in the 10th Mountain Ski Division. One of the problems at Pando was what they call the Pando hack. With all of the heat, you had coal burning stoves for heat, and you had that pollution, which affected a lot of guys, and was called the Pando hack. When they got a little time off, they went to Aspen, and they stayed on the floor of the Hotel Jerome, which was in bad shape at that time for nothing. And to stay warm, they drank a famous drink, 7 shots of bourbon and a thick chocolate malt called Aspen Crud. When they drank that, they never got cold. And they sang a great song. There are systems and theories of skiing, but one thing I surely have found, the skiing's just good in the winter, but the drinking's good all year around. They shipped out in January of 1945, and they fought in Italy in the Apennines Mountains. The Germans had defensive lines up the Apennines. They held the high ground. And they got involved in a great battle called Riva Ridge, and then Mount Belvedere. And then they got into the Po Valley. And on May the 2nd, the Germans surrendered. Out of 14,300 men in the 10th, 964 died, 4,154 were wounded, 46 got silver stars, and 1 got the Congressional Medal of Honor. When they got back, they led in starting skiing as we know it today. They were the guys who started the ski areas. On top of that, we had 100,000 pairs of surplus skis, cheap, that weren't used during the war. On top of that, the automobile was now more important. And the interstate highway system had gotten started. And as a result, there was a great skiing boom. And a lot of you folks may not know this, but in the 1946, there weren't very many ski areas in the West. Sun Valley, Bear Mountain, we had Wolf Creek, we had Monarch. They were all very primitive. And then Rosman Hill closed up in 1961. But not before 1 mile up the lower loop, right where the old Pershing mine was, and near the Gronk that all you people know of today, they started the Pershing Mine Ski Hill. And that lasted for locals with a jump for about 4 years till 1955. And finally we come to Crested Butte. When Dick Eflin, a member of the Air Force, heard about Crested Butte from one of his friends, came in, walked over to Tony's Tavern, talked to Tony Capuchin, wowed him with all the great scenery, he said, and Tony Capuchin said you can't eat scenery. And all the old-timers were a little dubious about a ski area. But they bought, with Fred Rice, who had the money, his fraternity brother from Kansas, they bought the Molensic Ranch at the base of Crested Butte Mountain. Got a permit from the Forest Service. And then, in 1961-62, the Crested Butte ski area opened up with a rope tow, a T-bar, and a J-bar. In January of 1963, the gondola came in. We missed out by about 3 weeks of having the first gondola in Colorado. Vail beat us by about 3 weeks. Father Leo McKenna came over, and in the Italian tradition, it was Italian gondola, blessed the gondola with holy water. And the damn thing broke down 50 feet out of the warming house. Then Father McKenna went to the parking lot, slipped and fractured his kneecap. A very inauspicious beginning for the Crested Butte gondola. The beer stew was famous. Right where the bottom of West Wall is today, that was where the T-bar ended. That is where one of the old Molensic barns. The beer was always cold, the women were all good looking, and the music was always hot. And then came Flaushink in 1969. Thanks to George, thanks to Art, thanks to Chuck Kurtz. Michael Grazier, who just passed away in 1973 off of Tower 7, did the first triple backflip in history on Tower 7. The next year, and Michael told me this, one guy in the Galande jumping at Alta had come off the jump and did a backflip and landed 170 feet down. He, Grazier, and Roger Ramjet Evans decided they had to do something better than that to win first prize. So they came off the jump holding hands. Evans did a forward flip, Michael did a backflip, landed it, and won first prize. North Face opened up for extreme skiing in 1970. Rick Borkovic revives telemark skiing, 1974 on the flank of Mount Axtell. The Flying Bambini Brothers, which you'll see in the slides. 10 guys coming off a jump where the West Wall is today, T-bar then, holding hands, doing a backflip, and landing and holding hands. And then there was the legend of Garth Hammond, a Western State College student. This is Flaushink, 1970. I'm skiing up at Crested Butte with my good friends Bruce Bartleson and Tom Prater. They have a slalom race coming down Keystone. We're down below. I said, you guys go on up there, I'll pick up our jackets and I'll walk my way up. As I walk my way up towards the bottom of the run, on where they're holding the slalom, on Jokerville, all at once I see this guy come down, and it doesn't look like he's doing anything spectacular, but the crowd is going crazy, and there's about 500 people on the side of Jokerville. As he got closer to me and I got closer to him, I could see he was nude. And he fell towards the bottom. And his friend with all of his clothes came running down like Keystone cops, fell and littered the run with all his clothes. He was arrested, taken by the ski patrol, put in a sheriff's car, taken down to Gunnison. They got to Jack's cabin. The sheriff hears over the intercom, a man has, what's that? Very good. Great. Bingo. Over the intercom comes the radio. A guy has stolen a car in Gunnison's heading up towards Crested Butte. Be on the lookout. Right around Jack's cabin, they spot the car. Car runs into a snowbank, runs into Kenny Span's field. Garth Hammond is in the back of the car in the back seat with handcuffs on, and he says to the sheriff, who's in no condition to go and get that guy, he says, take them handcuffs off me, I'll go get that guy. The sheriff takes the handcuffs off. Garth Hammond runs into the field, hits the guy, brings him into the car. He is now riding shotgun, and the guy is in the back seat with the handcuffs on. 2 days later, the Thursday paper comes out. On the front page is a picture of Garth Hammond. Headline, local hero captures car thief. Not one damn word about what happened with him skiing nude. And the last little story I'll tell one on myself. About 1973 or 74, I can't remember the year. I skied all day. I'm in Tony's Tavern, now known as the Wooden Nickel. And I'm having a hamburger and a order of fries and a beer. And a guy walks in with a guitar and he says to Jim White, the bartender, would you mind if I strum my guitar by the fireplace? And Whitey said, you go right ahead. Inside of 15 minutes, the place was jammed and people were fighting to get in. And we are all singing along. Some people say that there's a woman to blame, but I know it's my own damn fault. Jimmy Buffett played for 3 hours for nothing. All he got was drinks. So, before we get to the slides, I've jotted them down. Hope I don't miss anybody. We remember the great ones of the past. Bruce Palmer, Dave Gorsuch, Carl Easterly,
Yes.
Stevie Allen, Rachel Weaver, Jill Matlock,
Yeah.
Janet Antrim, Kim Reichhelm,
Yeah.
Wendy Fisher, Aaron Blanc, Seth Morrison, Dave Swandike, and others. But I'm going to finish off, and it's most appropriate we do this at Flaushink when we're remembering the old days. A great song that I grew up with that went something like this, and I won't sing it, I'll just say it. Once upon a time there was a tavern where we used to raise a glass or two and laugh and while away the hours and think of all the great things we would do. Those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We picked the life we choose. We thought we'd never lose, for we were young and sure to have our way. And I'm here to tell you that anybody who is living in the Gunnison Country and Crested Butte, we have had our way for a long time. Thank you. Now the lights are going to go out. There's Dara. Okay, here we go. All right, 1, 2, 3. When it's springtime in the Rockies, I'm coming back to you. Sweetheart of the mountains, with your body eyes of blue. Once again, I'll say I love you. One word sings all the day. When it's springtime in the Rockies, far away. Very good. Now, before we go to the slides, this came from a great movie called Rosemary, starring Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald in 1936. And Nelson Eddy is playing a member of the Rocky Mountain, Mounted Police of Canada, their band. And he says, the twilight's deepened into night. The city lights are gleaming o'er the snow. I sit alone beside the cheery fire deer. I'm dreaming dreams from how long ago. I fancy it is springtime in the mountains. The flowers with their colors are aflame. And every day I hear you softly saying, I'll wait until the springtime comes again. Here we go. Alright, this is the first Flauschink, 1969. Whitey Scorsich and Kathy Wirtz, as George mentioned. There's Bob Vandervoort of Rapid River, Michigan, running into town, a little down on his luck. Next. There's a snowshoe race in Irwin, 1883. Joe Block and Beecher Bainey. Next. That is Charlie Bainey on the left and Al Johnson on the right at Irwin in 1883. Two of the legends. Next. They're colored here. Okay, that's That is skiing in Crested Butte. You can see the length of the skis and the guide poles. Next, again, getting on a weekend and skiing at Irwin. Next. This is in the Sierras, and that's how high some of those skis were. I'd like to see some of the hot shots ski on those suckers. Next. Crystal Snowshoe Club, 1886. Next. Crested Butte Ski Club, 1886. Next. There is 1884. Someone has died, and they are taking the body to a blockhouse, which is at the Crested Butte Cemetery until the ground thaws out. Next. Little Girl in Crystal, 1886.
Perfect.
Next. This is Animus Forks, high above Silverton, 1913. The snow was so heavy that the telegraph wires were covered. Next. Crested Butte Town Band. You see the guy with the tuba? Move him over a little. That guy is John Belushi's father, isn't it? Doesn't it look like John Belushi? Next. This is 1907. And on the side, the guy says, we went out for a run or two, and he said he wouldn't have recognized us as the same group when we got back. It was a tough day. Next. This is 4 miles up the Slate River. This is Anthracite or Smith Hill. And this is the biggest coal breaker in the United States west of Pennsylvania. Next. There is the Elk Mountain House, later on known as Donita's. Crested Butte's answer to the Levita Hotel. Next. Plane cracked the whip on Quicks Hill across from Cement Creek. That's dangerous in the parking lot or at school, much less on the hill. Next. 4 women from Steamboat Springs, 1920. It's very interesting because the 3 on the right have guide poles and the one on the left has 2 ski baskets. Next, times are changing. 1924, Gunnison out by the airport. These guys are out shooting rabbits. Next. Here we go now. We got a lot of great skiers in this room. This guy is Carl Easterly, 18 years old, graduate Gunnison High School, doing one of the first backflips in history on Quicks Hill in 1938. Next. He has now gone off to war in the South Pacific. In 1946, he's working in Los Angeles. A early TV company with a program called You Asked For It finds out about Easterly, and they bring he and his brother Verl to Sun Valley, Idaho for a program. You can see him filming on the right, pulled by an ancient helicopter at 50 miles an hour. Next.
There is a helicopter standing by for some hair-breadth-raising action. And let's take off, huh? You asked for it. Boy, acrobatics going 40 miles an hour. Whoops, a fence. What do we do? At 50 miles an hour. Yum. Brother, with a complete front flip. You'd like to see that in slow motion. We'll slow it down. Look at that. 3-point landing. Up again. That takes balance, believe me. I should have missed that face, don't you think? Wow. Oh. That's too fast. I want to see that again. Slow motion. Watch this balance now. Look. the most thrilling thing skiing or skiing that I ever saw in my life. And they just opened up their whole bag of tricks there just for you because you asked for it.
Furl Falls. Carl Easterly skis across a 100-yard pond on alpine skis at 50 miles an hour. Next. He comes out and makes it. Next. And now he does a backflip over a wooden fence. Now, up until the time Carl died in '94, about 10 years ago, I used to tell him, I said, Carl, I showed all those photos at Flaushink, and everybody gave you a round of applause as the best there ever was. Next, Vale Pass. They said, how the hell can that be Vale Pass? Gunnison one direction, Salida the other. Well, when they paved Monarch Pass in 1939, Charlie Vale was a highway commissioner and he was an arrogant SOB. So they wanted to name it after him. But the locals kept throwing the sign into the ditch. And then what they did was drop the P, put an apostrophe after the L, and it read Vale's ass. Charlie Vale gave up. Named it Monarch like it should have been, but they got another Vale Pass named for it. Next. Here are Billy Fisk and Tom Hayden in 1932 hiking up to the top of Mount Hayden above Ashcroft. And that looked like great stuff. Next. And there they are on top. Andre Roach, one of the great skiers in the world, and Billy Fisk on the right, killed in an airplane flying for the RAF at the start of World War II. The dream died. Next. There is the Marshall Pass ski train, February 13, 1938. Skiing off of almost 11,000-foot high Marshall Pass. People dreaming of a possible lift. Next. There is Chicken Ranch, 1 mile up the Slate River. And there are locals who will build up some jumps, and as you can see, there are no figure-8 turns on the way down. They're all straight down. Next. I love this one. This is a woman with her young son in a snowdrift box mounted on a sled. She is leaving White Pine and skiing 10 miles to the railroad switch at Sargent's. 1939. Next. There is Pioneer and there's the Comet. That's the chairlift. Next. Well, that's how they got the idea for chairlifts. The miners used to ride the buckets up and down. Next. There is the warming house and people lined up to get on the chair. Next. There's the chair. How'd you like to ride a chair like that? The Forest Service that didn't know much about skiing in the fall looked at that chair and they said, it's too far above the ground. People fall out there, they're going to die. They said, lower the chair. So they lowered the chair, and then a whole bunch of snow fell, and people got knees under their chin and got flipped out of the chair. And the Forest Service said, you got to raise those damn chairs. Next. Every run is a fall-away turn, and it's steep. You can see Crested Butte Mountain in the distance. No preparation of the snow, and it's steep. Next. Camp Hale. Next. Saturday Evening Post article on the 10th Mountain. Next. There is what they call the weasel. They experimented with a lot of different things, and that was a cat pulling skiers. Didn't work very well. Next, there is a motorized toboggan. They experimented with that. Next. Now there, ladies and gentlemen, is Riva Ridge. The 10th Mountain Ski Division, with no ammunition, because they didn't want somebody to fire a shot off accidentally. The Germans were on top. It was so steep they didn't think anybody could take it. So they really didn't prepare to watch that side. And the 10th Mountain had fixed ropes on some of the ledges, and they went up at night and they took Riva Ridge without firing a shot. And Riva Ridge today is the #1 run at Vail. Next. There is the Aspen Boat Tow, 1938. Powered by the back end of a car wheel. 8 people could sit in that boat and go 500 yards up the side of Ajax Mountain. Next. There is Climax. Right across from the Climax mine on Chalk Mountain, that is a T-bar. And that is where Dave Gorsuch and Jackie Gorsuch and a lot of other great skiers learned how to ski. And Dave told me that they used to go up there, they run it in the morning at about 5:30, their fathers and mothers. They would ski a couple of runs, and their fathers and mothers would pick them up on the highway down below and bring them back, and they'd be in school at 8:30 in the morning. Next. This is in the 1940s, skating on Maroon Lake beneath the Maroon Bells at Aspen. Next. Chair 1 at Aspen. 1-person chair. Blankets went over your legs. I used to ski there and rode that a lot in the 1960s. And if you look at Aspen, there are city blocks in Aspen in 1947 with nothing on them. You could have bought a house for $500 and the whole block for $1,000. Next. Little Nell during the FIS championships in 1951. Next. Rosamond Hill, bringing in an injured skier, 1952. Next. Cars are piled up all the way to Highway 50. Watching the slalom race, you can see the jumping tower down below. Rosamond Hill. Next. Move that over so I can see the guy on the left. There you go. Spenwick is our coach. Western State team at Rosamond Hill, and that sign says, tow tickets $1. Next. There is the jump with the jumping tower on the left. Next. 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the Gunnison Country in the summer. Next. Crested Butte, January 1952. I don't know what that car is doing on the right. It's not going anywhere because they didn't plow the roads. Everybody took the battery out, drained the radiator, put it up on blocks, and brought it out again in April. Next. Pershing Mine Ski Hill with the Gronk in the background. Next. There's my good friend Steve Krismanich, who unfortunately died early of cancer. Here he is skiing the slalom. That is fantastic skiing with the bindings, the skis, and the poles. He was very good. Next. Bobby Greenfield coming off the jump. Next. Gretchen Frazier, United States. First woman to win a gold medal, did in the 1948 Olympic Games. Next. The late, great Buddy Werner skiing at Rosamond Hill. Buddy Werner, the greatest alpine skier for the men we've ever had. He won, he's the only American ever to win the Hahnenkamm at Kitzbühel. A man named Darren Rawls won it one year for the U.S., but didn't have a lot of skills, so they ran halfway. When you win the Hahnenkamm at Kitzbühel, they say you will never again buy another drink or meal in all of Austria. Buddy Werner skied in the '64 Olympic Games, was 7th in the downhill, was skiing with Willy Bogner in a promotional movie in Valseline, Switzerland. 15 of them, avalanche, people on the chair could see it, avalanche, came down, 13 out of the way. Buddy Werner, Bobby Hendenberger, who was 3rd in the downhill for Germany, and Willy Bogner's fiancée were in the way of the avalanche. They beat the avalanche to the bottom, but a side avalanche came in from the side and killed them both. They brought Buddy Werner's body back, buried him, changed the name of Storm Mountain to Mount Werner in his honor. Next, Stein Eriksson, reverse shoulder. Next, Andrea Mead Lawrence of the United States, 2 gold medals in the 1952 Olympic Games. Next, Ingemar Stenmark of Sweden. Stenmark held the all-time record for wins. When Michaela Schifrin won her 92nd race to beat his record, he was at the finish line with a bouquet of flowers. Next, Crested Butte before the ski area, 1948. Next, Dick Eflin playing the guitar at the warming house. The guy down on the left is Paul Johnston, who owned the Ore Bucket, the first place where you could stay. Later on went to Vail and started the Tivoli. Next, warming house. That little cabin there on the right bottom, that is the J-Bar cabin, 1962. Next, S.J. Miller coming off one of the Malinsik barns with Bobby Schweitzer on top, ready to come down after him. Next, there is the beer stove, where the beer was cold, the women were hot, and the music was tremendous. Next, there is the Ore Bucket. That's the only place you could stay. That's 1963. Just imagine what's there today. Next, that's the beer stube again with 4 guys having a drink. We had a guy named Jack Hudson in the ski patrol, and every Saturday he would come in and the snow was piled up right to the rafters. And you'd hear on the roof, and Hudson would come up, jump right over the roof and land in the parking lot. Next, Crested Butte Ski Patrol 1970s. See if you can pick out Eric Lamb, Ron Kavanek, Tracy Wickland, Jeff Pike, Charlie Paulsonelli. Next. Move that over. That is Frank and Gals. That was the greatest bar in Crested Butte. And in 1971, when it closed, Cindy from Louisville played the accordion. The last dance was Gal Starica and a guy named Leo Klinker, who danced the beer barrel polka on the bar that was about that wide. We were all on either side of the bar with our hands waiting for him to fall. All the glasses had been moved off. They never missed a beat and danced the beer barrel polka for 3 minutes. Next.
Oh, okay.
Skiing Phoenix Bowl. You know, I had a routine. I was working on a book, and the ski patrolmen are all in the background there, you can see it. And I always told those guys, when you get set up, Let me go on down. I always got the first run. I never figured it out. Next. Steve Manfredo, the greatest backcountry skier of them all, died of pulmonary edema on Communist Peak in Russia in the 80s. 2,000 people, including the Secretary of the Interior, showed up at the Cement Creek Ranch for his memorial. Next. Avalanche, 1990s, 3 seasons. Killed a little boy from Texas in the parking lot, ready to go home with his mother and father. That's why they have those snow sheds up there today. Next. Lisa Blanc. Where is she? Lisa, get over here. We're going to bring Lisa over. We're going to sing a song on her behalf. There we go. No, you're right. Come on, we all know the words. Hooray for Lisa, hooray at last. Hooray for Lisa, she's the horse's ass. That's your father. That's your father right behind the road.
That's his mother
About
and
5 years old. Skiing pretty well. Tony proposed to Next. Gondola with Father McKenna. There's Father McKenna. Damn thing broke down 50 feet out. Next. There we go, flying. These guys are jumping off Tower 7. And that is where Michael Grazier did the first successful triple backflip in history. Next. Same thing, next. Paul Hitchcock at Alta, Utah, setting the all-time record in Galandi jumping at 224 feet in 1975. Next. That's the way it looked when Crested Butte got started. Little pond on the left, bridge, not much there. Next. Princess Theater. That's when you had to tunnel into the establishments. Next. Crested Butte, 1970s, dirt road. Next. There's the warming house. Steve Manfredo on the right. Next. Crested Butte, Christmas Eve, 1968. Next. Keystone Mine tailings. That stuff used to float into Coal Creek, the drinking supply, Crested Butte, until the treatment plant was put in. Next. There is the ski school. From right to left. Billy Schweitzer. Don Bachman. There's George Sibley, third from the right. Walt Fricky. Mike Zaradka. John Burns. And Jeff Jacobson, 1966. Next. Waiting to get in line for the gondola. Next. Ski Monument. 1972. Next. Avalanche of Bridal Veil Falls Telluride. 1974. Next. Flying Band Brothers. There they are. Ramjet Evans, Michael Grazier, Tony Nipa, Peter Brewster, Rick Wood, and 3 guys from Steamboat Springs. Next. That is New Year's Eve, 1968. Great polka going on at the warming house. I stepped out and got lucky. Got a nice picture. Next. And there is the place we love, with the Elk Mountains in the background, and then, ladies and